God rescues you even when you're hurt, even when your heart is hurt, when your feelings are hurt. And if you live in this world for very long at all, you will have your feelings hurt. And a lot of times that crushes us, but God will still come and rescue us. Come rescue you, He'll come rescue me. And there is a popular phrase: shall I forgive 7 times? No, you should forgive 70 times 7. That's a story about Peter. Peter is a disciple, apostle, great leader of the church, but before he is a great leader of the church, he struggles, just like you and I. And I think at one point his feelings are hurt. It's a story in Matthew chapter 18, verses 21 and 22. It says this: Then Peter came and said to Jesus, Lord, how often shall my brother sin against me and I forgive him? Up to 7 times? And you know just as well as I do that Peter had somebody in mind when he asked that question, right? He wasn't just hypothetically asking. He had some situation that he was worried about, that he was thinking about. Verse 22 says this: Jesus said to him, I do not say to you up to 7 times, but up to 70 times 7. Great couple of pieces of scripture, great word from God here, and it challenges me. It truly does. See, I have this friend. He is a wonderful friend. His name is Todd. And Todd and I have been friends for a long time, mostly because of his grace, certainly not because of my kindness or anything like that. But Todd and I didn't always have a great relationship. It's because we played racquetball together. And racquetball, if you know, racquetball can be a great sport, a wonderful sport. It can also be a very dangerous sport. And when Todd and I were playing, we'd play and we'd play hard, and we were both 18, 19, 20-year-old guys. We were manning it up and hitting the ball as hard as we can strategically, wonderful shots. And every once in a while, I'd run up to the front, and sometimes Todd would hit the ball really hard, try to get it around me in a really difficult position for me to return the ball, and it would hit me. Instead of it hitting the wall like it was supposed to, it hit me. And man, the first time it happened, I had looked back, I think, and I kind of smiled, and that hurt a lot. And then the next time it happened, now it's not just my back that's hurting, it's my pride that's hurting. And then the next time it would hit me, I would just get so mad at him. I'm pretty sure I yelled at him a few times on the racquetball court. I'm pretty sure he yelled at me a few times on the racquetball court as well, because my aim wasn't nearly as good as his was. And so, yeah, I hit him a few times as well. And I remember being hit, and I think that Peter would have felt the same way. I think that Peter would have thought, man, I am hurting. How many times do I have to put up with this? And finally he comes to Jesus. He looks at Jesus and he says, hey, so Jesus, I've got a question for you, right? How many times am I supposed to forgive my brother? Now his brother was one of the disciples as well. Andrew was walking around with them. I don't know if he was talking about his brother or his kinsman or a person in the community or whoever, he had somebody in mind. And when he said that, when he asked that, what he was asking was, man, how many times do I have to put up with this until I am justified in getting angry, in losing my temper, in realizing that this wasn't an accident? Not maybe the first time was an accident, the second time, third time, no, 4, no, 5, come on. And I think Peter thinks, wow, I'm really going out on a limb here. 7 times? I'm going to get hit by a racquetball 7 times, and I'm going to forgive every single time. But 8 times, man, I'm justified, right, Jesus? Is that correct? How many times do I have to forgive? And what happens is when our feelings get hurt, when we get hurt inside, and a lot of times we get very legalistic, just like Peter does here. We get legalistic and we start to say, what is the amount that I have to put up with? Let me check off this list. If you have kids, you know exactly what this looks like. How many times can my kid write on the wall in my house before I'm allowed to blow up? To make a point. I warned you, son. Don't write on the walls. And still you've done it. We get really legalistic when our pride is hurt, when our feelings are hurt, when our heart is hurting. Peter gets very legalistic 7 times. And Jesus' response tells us a lot about what he expects from us, how he rescues us. Jesus looks at Peter and says, I don't say to you 7 times. Think more like this: 70 times 7. What he's saying is very simple. Jesus is asking Peter to forgive a godly amount of times. And there's 2 things I want to point out about that. One is a statement, one is a question. First of all, the statement. When Jesus says that, forgive 70 times 7, what he recognizes and what Peter knows instantly, and what you and I should hear, is that this is impossible with man. Jesus is asking Peter not to rely on his own strength, but to rely on God's strength when it comes to forgiving your brother or your neighbor. Don't rely on your stuff. Jesus says, Peter, forgive a godly amount of times. In other words, you can't do that. You're going to have to learn to trust in me. The first time you forgive, the second, the fourth, the 70th, the 70 times 70th, so on and so forth. Your forgiveness doesn't need to be a mankind forgiveness. It needs to be a Jesus forgiveness. It is impossible with man. It requires faith. It requires trust in God. And that's the second point. It's a question. The first is that the forgiveness is impossible with man. And the second is this question: on whom will you rely on for strength to forgive? Will you rely on yourself? That's hard, because when our hearts are hurt, isn't it difficult to rely on our own strength for anything, let alone forgiveness? Jesus says this time of difficulty, the 8th time that you need to forgive, the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, and so on, all the way to 70 times 7. All of those times, you're not going to have the heart to forgive. Tells us a lot about Jesus, doesn't it? It's his way of saying, I forgive you, and so I can forgive the people that are around you through you. That's what Jesus does for us. That's how he changes us. He changes us from relying on our own strength to relying on God's. I'm going to pray for you this week. I hope that you can rely on God to forgive others. God bless you. Have a great, great day.